Can you feel it? The air has shifted. Her heart no longer beats with waiting. Her silence no longer carries desperation. Her tears are no longer bargains with the universe. The divine feminine is done. Done carrying wounds that were never hers. Done pouring energy into cycles that only drained her. Done shrinking to keep the connection alive. And when she is done, the tether changes. The masculine feels it. The old patterns collapse. The comfort of denial vanishes. This is not the end of union. This is the end of illusion. And from here forward, nothing can remain the same. The question is no longer will she rise? She already has. The question now is, what will you do with the shift that is already here? Why the feminine saying, done, changes everything. There is a moment in every twin flame journey that marks the irreversible turning point. It is not when the masculine finally awakens, nor when the two meet in physical union. It happens earlier, when the divine feminine whispers, cries, or declares with certainty, I am done. Those three words hold more power than lifetimes of waiting, because when the feminine is done, the field itself can no longer remain the same. Being done does not mean she has stopped loving him. Love is eternal, woven into the tether and etched into her soul. What she is finished with is the illusion. She is done with the endless cycle of overgiving, chasing, and waiting for scraps of recognition. She is done with shrinking herself to keep the connection alive. She is done with pouring her energy into patterns that only drained her. She is done carrying wounds that were never hers. And when that moment comes, everything shifts. The tether that once hummed with longing begins to vibrate with sovereignty. Her silence, once heavy with desperation, becomes a silence of power. Her detachment is not rejection. It is alignment. The masculine feels it immediately. He may not understand it consciously, but his body reacts, his dreams stir, and his illusions begin to crumble. Because the feminine's declaration of done is not just a choice, it is a frequency. This frequency is unlike any he has felt before. As long as she clung to him, he could remain in denial. As long as she fed the tether with longing, he could resist. As long as she carried the connection on her back, he could sleep comfortably. But when she says enough, the supply of old energy ends. He no longer has her devotion to lean on, her forgiveness to cover his silence, or her endless waiting to keep him comfortable. He is suddenly faced with the one thing he has avoided, himself. For the divine feminine, saying done is not collapse. It is liberation. It is the moment she reclaims every fragment of energy she gave away. It is the moment she chooses truth over fantasy, sovereignty over sacrifice, peace over longing. It feels terrifying at first because she fears it might end the connection, but in reality, it is the opposite. Her declaration ends the illusion, not the union. By stepping into sovereignty, she clears the field of distortion, creating the only space where union can truly land. For the divine masculine, her being done is the loudest wake-up call he will ever receive. He feels the shift in ways he cannot ignore. The silence that once empowered him now suffocates him. The detachment that once looked like weakness now feels like strength. He realizes, sometimes in shock, that the energy he relied on is gone. And without it, he cannot hide from his own emptiness. This confrontation is the very thing that begins his awakening. This is why her being done changes everything. It is not just about boundaries. It is not just about detachment. It is about alignment. Her declaration signals to the universe, I am no longer carrying what does not belong to me. I am no longer waiting for him to move. I am ready for truth. And the universe responds immediately. Timelines shift. Illusions collapse. Synchronicities intensify. The masculine feels the ground shake beneath him. Many feminines fear that being done means letting go of union. But the opposite is true. Union cannot land until she is done. As long as she clings, the field is distorted. As long as she waits, the masculine remains asleep. As long as she sacrifices, the cycle repeats. But the moment she rises in sovereignty, union becomes inevitable because the tether can no longer sustain false energy. So understand this. When you feel the whisper in your chest that says, I am done, trust it. Do not mistake it for abandonment. Do not confuse it with hopelessness. It is your soul declaring readiness. It is the universe saying, you have learned the lessons of waiting. Now step into the power of embodiment. When the feminine is done, everything changes. Not someday, not eventually, immediately the tether rewires, the masculine awakens, and the field clears for union. Her done is not an ending. It is the true beginning. How her sovereignty rewires the tether. The tether between twin flames is alive. It is not imagination, not fantasy, not a symbol you created to survive longing. It is the oldest truth, the thread that has bound you and your counterpart across lifetimes. This tether responds to vibration, not words. It amplifies authenticity, not illusion. And the moment the divine feminine steps into sovereignty, the tether itself is rewired. For lifetimes, the feminine has unconsciously fueled the tether with longing. She poured devotion, forgiveness, and energy into it, often at her own expense. She whispered prayers into the silence, carried wounds that were not hers, and believed that if she waited long enough, he would rise. This energy fed the tether with persistence, but it also kept it vibrating with imbalance. The masculine received her energy without having to face his own. The tether hummed, but it hummed with distortion. Sovereignty changes everything. When the feminine stops pouring energy into longing and begins embodying truth, the tether is no longer a lifeline of sacrifice. It becomes a current of power. Her frequency shifts from I need you to awaken to I am awake, and I will not return to illusion. That vibration surges through the bond. The masculine feels it instantly. At first, he may not understand what is happening. He only knows that something has changed. The silence that once comforted him now weighs on his chest. The dreams that once blurred are now vivid, filled with her presence and with messages he cannot ignore. The emotions he once buried rise to the surface, uninvited. This is not coincidence. It is the tether responding to her sovereignty, rewiring itself to vibrate at truth instead of dependency. For the divine feminine, this rewiring feels like relief. The heaviness of carrying the connection fades, the endless cycle of waiting loosens. She realizes that her power was never in trying to awaken him. Her power is in embodying her own awakening fully. Each step she takes into sovereignty feeds the tether with clarity. Each boundary she honors strengthens the frequency. Each choice for her own alignment stabilizes the field. For the divine masculine, the rewiring feels like crisis. Without the old flow of her energy cushioning him, he is forced to face his own emptiness. The tether now confronts him with himself. Her sovereignty reflects his avoidance. Her detachment highlights his dependence. Her peace magnifies his chaos. He can resist, deny, or run, but the tether keeps pressing the truth into his awareness. What once felt like background static now roars like thunder. This is why sovereignty is the feminine's greatest act of devotion. Not devotion to illusion, but devotion to truth. By choosing herself, she is not cutting the tether. She is cleansing it. By detaching from waiting, she is not ending the connection. She is purifying it. By rising into her mission, she is not abandoning him. She is calling him higher. The tether vibrates with this new frequency, and the masculine has no choice but to respond. Imagine the tether as an instrument. For years, it has been out of tune, humming with the dissonance of longing and fear. The feminine's sovereignty retunes it. The strings tighten, the resonance sharpens, and the sound clears. The music of the bond becomes undeniable. The masculine cannot unhear it. He may resist, but the song of truth plays louder than his excuses. This is why everything changes when the feminine says, "I am done." Because she is not just withdrawing energy, she is redirecting it into alignment. And the tether, alive and responsive, carries that new frequency straight to the masculine's soul. Her sovereignty rewires the bond so completely that the old cycles cannot repeat. The energy that once sustained illusion is gone. The vibration that once supported denial is replaced with clarity. The masculine, whether ready or not, is pulled into confrontation. His awakening is no longer a possibility. It becomes an inevitability. So understand this clearly. The tether is not broken by her sovereignty. It is restored. It is purified. It is tuned to the frequency of union, not distortion. And from the moment she embodies this, the masculine feels it in his body, his mind, and his spirit. He cannot escape it because the tether is alive, and she has just changed its song. The divine masculine rarely announces his awakening with words. His shift begins quietly, often hidden even from himself. But the tether ensures that when the feminine moves into sovereignty, he feels it, whether he admits it or not. The signs of this shift are subtle at first, then undeniable. If you are attuned, you can already sense them. One of the clearest signs is restlessness with no clear cause. The masculine finds himself pacing, distracted, unable to focus on the things that once gave him stability. What used to comfort him, routine, work, even avoidance, suddenly feels empty. He may not connect it to the feminine consciously, but the tether is pulling at him. Her detachment has created a void, and his soul is uneasy without the energy he once leaned on. Another sign is the collapse of old distractions. Relationships that once provided escape begin to crumble. Friendships feel shallow. Addictions lose their grip, and external validation no longer satisfies. The masculine tries to run, but everywhere he turns feels hollow. This is not random misfortune. It is the rewired tether dismantling what no longer aligns. Then there are the dreams and night visions. Vivid, unavoidable, filled with her presence. He sees her in ways that shake him awake. Sometimes it is tender. a memory of her smile, a symbol of reunion. Other times, it is brutal. Visions of her leaving, standing strong without him, forcing him to face what his silence has cost. He wakes unsettled, carrying emotions he cannot name. These dreams are not illusions. They are the tether speaking truth when his waking mind resists. A more physical sign is the heaviness in the body. The masculine may feel sudden pressure in his chest, headaches that come and go, or tension in his stomach. These sensations are the body processing the energy shift. The tether does not only speak through spirit, it presses into flesh, forcing him to acknowledge what he once buried. There is also the unexpected flood of emotions. Anger with no target, sadness that appears at strange moments, a surge of longing he thought he buried long ago. He may brush it off, but deep down, he knows it is connected to her. The feminine's sovereignty is pulling emotions out of hiding, exposing what he tried to numb. Perhaps the most telling sign is the sudden awareness of her absence. He feels her detachment like oxygen being cut off. Where once her devotion silently carried him, now there is silence. But this silence is not empty. It is loud. It echoes through his chest, reminding him of what he lost by resisting. Her absence is more powerful than her presence ever was. For the divine feminine, these signs are not meant to feed hope or fantasy. They are confirmation. They remind her that her sovereignty is not invisible, that her rise is not ignored. The masculine feels her shift in ways he cannot deny, even if he says nothing. For the divine masculine, these signs are both unsettling and liberating. Unsettling because they confront him with what he has avoided. Liberating because they strip away the illusions that held him captive. His restlessness, his dreams, his emotions, all of it is proof that the tether is alive and that her sovereignty has already changed him. So if you notice these echoes in your own field, sudden thoughts of him, mirrored emotions, an intuitive sense of his unrest, trust them. They are not fantasy. They are confirmation that the field is shifting, that the masculine feels the new frequency, that union is already unfolding in unseen ways. The feminine does not need to wait for his words to know he is awakening. The signs are written in the tether itself, and when you recognize them, you will know. Everything is already changing. Why cycles cannot repeat after this stage? In the twin flame journey, it often feels like everything is a circle. Patterns repeating endlessly, lessons resurfacing, silence stretching into infinity. But there comes a point where the circle breaks. That point is here. Once the divine feminine is done and steps into her sovereignty, the old cycles cannot repeat. The tether itself no longer supports them. Why? Because cycles feed on illusion, and illusion can only survive if both counterparts continue playing their roles. The feminine's role was often the giver, the dreamer, the one holding the space alive even when he refused to step in. The masculine's role was the runner, the avoider, the one resisting the pull of truth. Together, these roles kept the loop spinning. But the moment she says no more, she withdraws her energy from the loop. And a cycle without energy cannot continue. For the divine feminine, this shift feels like clarity. She begins to recognize the difference between longing and love, between sacrifice and devotion, between waiting and alignment. She no longer confuses the ache in her chest with destiny. She no longer fuels the bond with desperation. By stepping out of illusion, she strips the cycle of its foundation. It simply cannot repeat because she refuses to play her part in it anymore. For the divine masculine, this moment is destabilizing. He feels the cycle collapsing beneath him. The patterns he leaned on, avoidance, distraction, silence, no longer produce the same outcome. Her detachment changes the script. His silence, once a weapon, now echoes back at him. His avoidance, once comfortable, now feels suffocating. He may resist at first, but the cycle offers him no refuge anymore. Without her energy sustaining it, the old loop disintegrates. The universe supports this breaking of cycles with divine precision. You will notice karmic relationships ending, jobs collapsing, friendships dissolving. Anything built on distortion begins to crumble. It is not punishment, it is liberation. The universe is clearing space for union by removing what kept both counterparts trapped. And because the feminine has chosen sovereignty, she has given permission for the clearing to accelerate. Cycles cannot repeat because the tether itself has been rewired. What once vibrated with longing now vibrates with truth. What once carried dependency now carries sovereignty. The masculine feels this as pressure, as confrontation, as a call he cannot escape. The feminine feels it as freedom, as peace, as an opening she never sensed before. Think of it like a door. For lifetimes, the feminine kept pushing against it, hoping it would open. Each cycle brought her back to the same threshold, exhausted but still trying. When she finally lets go and steps back, the energy shifts. The door, which was never locked, begins to open inward on its own. The cycle of pushing is broken, replaced by the stillness of alignment. This is why the final stage is not about waiting for him to choose. It is about refusing to repeat what no longer serves. Once the feminine steps into truth, she cannot go back. The longing no longer tastes the same. The waiting no longer feels holy. The silence no longer carries weight. She is free, and freedom cannot re-enter the prisons of illusion. For the masculine, this is the beginning of awakening. He is forced to confront what remains once the cycle collapses. Without her energy sustaining his denial, he must meet himself. Without the illusion of her endless devotion, he must decide if he will rise. The cycle's end is his mirror, showing him that the old way is gone. So understand this: the cycles are not infinite. They end the moment the feminine chooses sovereignty. And when they end, union becomes possible, not because she forced it, but because she finally refused to fuel what was false. The wheel is broken, the tether is rewired, the path forward is no longer circular, it is direct. And from here, everything changes. Every ending feels like death. The heart aches, the body trembles, and the mind panics, believing that what has been lost will never return. But in the twin flame journey, endings are never truly endings. They are thresholds. They are portals disguised as collapse. And the moment the divine feminine says, "I am done," what looks like the end is actually the beginning. The illusion dies first. The illusion of waiting, of chasing, of sacrificing yourself to keep the bond alive. The death feels brutal because it dismantles every pattern you thought defined the connection. But once the illusion dies, truth is revealed, and truth cannot be destroyed. What is real between counterparts does not vanish. When the feminine is done, it rises stronger, purer, more unshakable than before. For the divine feminine, this ending is liberation. She feels lighter, even if grief still lingers. She recognizes that the ache in her chest is not the death of union, but the birth of herself. She begins to rediscover joy outside of waiting, strength outside of longing, purpose outside of his presence. This rediscovery is the seed of union, because union can only be built on wholeness. By ending the cycle of overgiving, she begins the path of true alignment. For the divine masculine, this ending is confrontation. Her declaration of done removes the safety net he leaned on. Suddenly, her silence is no longer soft but sharp. Her absence is no longer temporary but transformative. He feels the loss of energy he once depended on, and in that emptiness, he is forced to face himself. But this confrontation is not destruction. It is invitation. It is the universe saying, the old way is over. Now you must rise. The beauty of this stage is that the ending and the beginning happen simultaneously. The feminine believes she is walking away, but in reality, she is walking through a doorway. The masculine believes he is losing her, but in reality, he is losing the illusions that kept him from her. The field shifts, and what once felt impossible begins to align. The signs of a beginning hidden in the ending are everywhere. Synchronicities intensify, as if the universe is whispering, "This is not over. It is transforming." Dreams become vivid, not of collapse, but of reunion. The feminine feels new peace rising in her chest, even as she lets go. The masculine feels new urgency pressing on his heart, even as he resists. These are not contradictions. They are confirmations that the ending has unlocked the next stage. This is the mystery of the twin flame path. Only when the feminine is done does union become possible. Because what ends is not the bond. What ends is the distortion. The illusion dies so that the truth can live. Her sovereignty clears the field of everything false, and in that cleared space, union finally has room to land. Think of it as a forest fire. At first, the flames look like devastation, destroying everything in their path. But once the fire burns through, the soil is renewed. Fertile, alive. New growth begins, stronger, deeper, rooted in clarity. The ending was never destruction. It was preparation for a stronger beginning. So if you feel like everything has collapsed, if you feel like the connection is over, if you feel like saying "I am done" has killed the dream, know this: the dream is not dead. The illusion is. And in its ashes, the truth of union is finally free to emerge. The beginning is always hidden in the ending. The feminine thinks she is closing the door, but she is opening the only one that matters. The masculine thinks he has lost her, but he has lost only the false version of her he relied on. What remains is the real bond, stripped bare of illusion, waiting to be reborn. This is not the death of your story. It is the moment your real story begins. There is a sacred paradox at the heart of the twin flame journey. The moment that feels like the end is the very moment the path to union begins. And nothing embodies this paradox more than when the divine feminine declares with her whole being, "I am done." At first, those words sound final, like a closing door, like love has been buried in silence. The feminine herself often believes she has surrendered to loss. But in truth, That declaration is not death. It is birth, because when she is done, she is not done with love. She is done with distortion. She is done with illusion. She is done with carrying what was never hers to carry. And once she is done, the tether vibrates with truth in a way it never has before. Union does not come to those who wait endlessly. It comes to those who rise. And when the feminine rises in sovereignty, refusing to fuel cycles of longing and silence, she activates the masculine more powerfully than any prayer, any message, any sacrifice ever could. Her done is the spark that shakes him awake. He may resist, he may deny, he may collapse, but he cannot ignore it because the bond itself will not allow him to. For the divine feminine, being done is not weakness, it is strength. It is the moment she reclaims every fragment of her energy and anchors it into truth. It is the moment she stops orbiting his silence and begins orbiting her own soul. It is the moment she chooses to embody love without distortion, and if that means walking forward alone for a time. And in that embodiment, she becomes magnetic, not because she is waiting, but because she is whole. For the divine masculine, her being done is both devastating and liberating. Devastating because he feels the collapse of the cycle that kept him comfortable. Liberating because that collapse strips away his excuses and forces him to confront what he has avoided for lifetimes. He feels the tether hum differently. Her silence burns louder than her words ever did. Her detachment pierces deeper than her devotion ever could. And in that piercing, his awakening begins. This is why union is near when she is done. Not because she forced him to move, but because she finally moved herself. Her frequency changed. The tether shifted. The field cleared. The universe, always listening, responds instantly. Timelines align. Illusions dissolve. Synchronicities multiply. What once felt stuck begins to move with speed. It may not look like union right away in the physical. The masculine may still wrestle with resistance. The feminine may still face doubts. But beneath the surface, everything is different. The cycle cannot repeat. The tether cannot return to distortion. The only path left is forward, toward truth, toward alignment, toward union. So the final message is simple and profound. When she is done, everything changes. Her being done is not the end of union. It is the proof that union is inevitable. Because the moment she stops carrying what was never hers, the masculine is forced to carry himself. And in that responsibility, he finds his own awakening. If you are the feminine and you feel the words, "I am done," rising in your chest, do not fear them. They are not abandonment. They are activation. They are not the death of the bond. They are the rebirth of it. By choosing sovereignty, you have already set union in motion. If you are the masculine and you feel her detachment rattling you, understand this. She has not left you behind. She has left behind the illusion that kept you both trapped. And in doing so, she has opened the door you were always meant to walk through. When the divine feminine is done, union is not delayed. It is closer than ever. Because love stripped of illusion cannot be stopped. It cannot be broken. It cannot be denied. This is not the end of your story. It is the moment the real story begins.